When I first started law, I think I was thinking I would be helping people like my father, who was a small businessman.
Hi, I'm Derek Jensen, a state attorney and host of Who Gets What. To get to know me a little bit, you would find that I'm very technical. I can get into the deepest, darkest part of the tax code. I can give you strategies and show you key languages and phrases within those documents that'll make all kinds of magic things happen. But that's not really what this show is about. This show is about everything else. This is about the people. This is about their relationships, their values that they hold dear and strong, the ones they want to pass down for multiple generations. It's about how to do that. Often clients think who gets what is the only question that matters, but that's really where it begins. And that's why I wanted to talk to my dad. I watched my dad struggle with these issues as a kid, the pressure it put on him, and the pain that brought to him. I could see myself helping people like him. It was only years later that I realized how much of an inspiration he was in many parts of my life. He liked to say that his sons went on to do things that he had wanted to do as part of his goals. Shortly after college, he'd been in the Army and he had wanted to go on to be an officer. And he didn't get to do that, but my brother is, and my brother ended up retiring as a lieutenant colonel. He had worked and taken legal courses and was considering going and becoming an attorney up until he had a child and had to take care of paying all the bills. But I took over for that for him too. So in a way, my entrance into law school or path that way was because of my father. I grew up in Kalispell, Montana. It's a beautiful part of Montana. It's the Northwest. We've got mountains, lakes, skiing. For as long as I can remember, we've spent time on Flathead Lake, either at my uncle's ranch, which used to be the Homestead Ranch, or in Polson, Montana, which is where my grandmother lived. So as we think about the property, there's really two pieces to consider. The lake property is the portion that's down by Polson. It's where my dad grew up. It's where my aunts were at. Grandma and Grandpa settled there after leaving the homestead property, which is farther up north than the lake. My dad's older brothers, my uncles, all resided and lived and grew up in that area. And so there's really two parts of the family in a way. In my youth, when we would go down to the lake, we didn't go down to the Polson property. We actually went and stayed on the property of my uncle. So my enjoyment of the lake property really started later in life for me, after I was married, after I had children. It was often that we'd go down to the lake and there would be my parents would be there and my aunts and uncles and many of my cousins. And we got a chance to stay there. We actually bought a trailer ourselves. I had 3 little girls all living in that trailer and enjoying the lake and running into the water. We've brought our dog there, throwing the sticks off the dock. It's really become a focal point and a strong memory for my kids. I imagine my grandparents thinking about where we are right now, the idea that their great-grandkids would be out there in the lake and enjoying it and taking it in, and even great-great-grandkids, because we have now not only Generation 4, but Generation 5 who've been on the lake and enjoying that property, which is a testament really to the long-standing and the efforts that have been made. This property has always been a subject matter of conversation with my father. He is the youngest of 7 children, and as the youngest, he has lost all of his siblings except for one sister. And that has changed his relationship with the property because now he sees it as something that he doesn't want to give up on, that has a legacy, has memories for him, is land that wasn't necessarily joyful when he was a child, but there's this connection to it. So listening to my father for 50 plus years talk about the property, watching his activity, his approach to issues, to his family, you tend to get some assumptions about what his thoughts are. As an attorney, we're trained not to always accept those assumptions. You want to challenge those assumptions. I do this with my clients quite often. They'll come in and have a very specific idea about what they want to do. And I want to redirect them and say, well, why is it you want to do that? Trying to get a little deeper into what's the underlying issue is. What you can find often is that there may be a different approach that they hadn't considered because maybe they didn't know that there was a different approach, or there's an issue there that you really need to understand in order to address the what, to give them a solution that's actually going to work. And so that's the question I really had with my dad, because I've never sat down with him and had those deep conversations about, why is this important to you? Why do you feel like this property needs to be preserved?
Okay, move your chair like that.
We started the conversation outside. It was around sunset.
Okay, so
And of course, just as we were getting started, the wind came up.
Derek, could you have pull your coat down?
I'm sitting here with my
Just in
dad,
the
in
middle.
part because I want this all recorded.
Okay.
I want to be able to recount his legacy and understand what he was thinking. There's so many little family stories that I'm worried will get lost to time. I'm putting him on the spot, and he is nervous. He's wondering what I'm really looking for. The truth is, I'm not exactly sure. I just know that over the years, the stories I've heard don't tell me everything that motivates him about this land, and that's what I'm looking for.
What's his name? Give him how you use
I said his name.
Yeah.
He needs to do a little introduction so his voice can be heard.
Oh, yeah, you got to do a test, Dad. You got to speak.
This is a family event. You're hearing my mom, Karen, and my daughter, Taylor, get the recording set up.
Well, what's your name?
Wayne Alden Jensen.
And who are you?
And who am I? I'm Wayne Alden Jensen. I was born here on this property June 9th, 1938. That's who I am.
Okay.
And where we are is on the west shore of Flathead Lake, approximately 1.5 miles north of Folsom, Montana. And that's where we're at right now. The lake right behind us is got white caps on it because they just came up with a wind and the sun disappeared. It's on the mountains across the lake, but not on us right now. We're looking at here, there is approximately 50 some acres right on the lake and across from the lake, and another 140 acres above the city airport of Folsom. All of that property is still in Jensen family names. Now the ranch has been in existence for over 100 years. So basically that's the dynamics of the property as it sits right now, and as basically it has been that way for the majority of the 100 years.
Never sat down with him and had those deep conversations about why is this important to you? Why do you feel like this property needs to be preserved? It's a lot of times it's about how would you do this? How would you do that? Or what? We need to keep the property, or we need to develop the property, or we need to do this or do that. But to get to the emotional part, the connection that he personally has with this property, and to dispel any assumptions that I have, or confirm, in fact, that is the background, that is the reason he's doing it. Not to put myself in the picture and think, well, this is the reason that I would be interested in this property if I was my dad. And even with somebody as close as your father, what's amazing is you don't know. You don't know for sure until you have that conversation and explore it, because he may not have gone that far. He may not have thought it through to that point. Tell us how the land has been used really for the last 30 years, 40 years.
It's been sitting basically dormant. The orchard is deteriorating over the years because of people taking care of it. The old house, after Grandma Lily passed on, has been, we lease it out to a individual who's uses the part of the barn for storage and lives in the house. And other than that, the property has been pretty dormant.
Except for one part of the year when it becomes a gathering place. So tell us about that.
Yes, okay. The home house is the meeting place for, well, actually going back.
The ownership of the lake property changed. And what happened there is it was placed into a corporation. Corporations are three tiers of governance. You have the shareholders, you have the board, and then you have the officers of the corporation. And so that's the structure that it was created. It's a very good structure for asset protection, for having management of assets, for consolidating the various interests of the shareholders. But it's not really a family entity. It doesn't involve other stakeholders. It doesn't involve spouses of the shareholders. It doesn't involve the children of the shareholders. And so it's very limited in that sense and very much non-family, if you will, from that perspective, and much more business-like. And that's the structure that we're seeing here, and that my dad has been the caretaker of as a president and the main officer of the company.
All of the daughters of Lily and Walter and the sons of Lily and Walter, their offspring, basically are part of Jensen Inc., and they all accumulate here for business talk about what to do with the property.
Is that why they all come for the business?
They do come. Basically, we have an annual Jensen Inc. meeting. That seems to be the first part of August every year, and all of them kind of use that as a center point for cousins to get together. So it is part business, part communicating with relatives, close relatives, and it takes on the virtues of each one of the family's relationship with the other member of the family's relationships. So this family's been together that long, 1917 to 2025 so far, and still going.
Yeah. And so you did say that you're, land poor is what you said. So it wasn't necessarily a lot of cash flow.
Yes.
But there's other kind of value, another kind of capital, if you will, this idea that there's other values that have been passed along. What do you think would be some of the values that you could imagine that have been passed along, maybe from your parents, that you see kind of flowing down through your generation, through the next generation, and even on to the younger generations?
For one thing, consistency of love and respect through the whole system of the family. And that carries forth. I think that was implied upon our family, my generation with the second generation, and I think that carried through and on to the fourth generation and will continue.
Well, and there's some industry and some work ethic. I would say, you were talking about all the different types of things your father was involved in, and you were also talking about many of the things you've been involved in. So there's a lot of, would you say that you see some of that history kind of going on to that work ethic or that industry trying to find a solution?
Oh, absolutely. I think from first point of view, growing up in a ranch, you're very, very independent, and you don't work for a time clock for someone else. You have to generate your own income, and that's done through hard work and ingenuity, education, experience, and that all adds up to how successful you are financially, or as we've discussed, emotionally. So those things all go together and lead, in my generation, to working hard and coming up with different solutions of how to make a life and make a living. And I did that basically through education and ingenuity and hard work and companionship. I do need to stress the importance that of being your own boss means to people in our family. Because we were born and raised that way, we didn't expect to have anything given to us. So you had to work for it, and you worked through it through the things that I mentioned.
If Lily was here with us and she'd kind of seen how it's been used and how it's been used as a gathering space for family, every year, what would her thoughts be, do you think?
Well, I've never thought of that. I would have to say that anybody that's put into her life what she put into this property would want to continue to see it within the family. One interesting point, when she was in the rest home here in Polson, she wanted Karen and I to bring her out here. We brought her out, and she was here for just a very brief, short time and wanted to go back to the rest home. And it was basically, I don't remember her saying it, but I think what she said, that my life is no longer there. How you would interpret that, I would not know.
So if we think of a legacy and we think of going forward, and you were talking about on the business side how it might change, let's do it the other way now. Let's project out 20 years from now. How would you see the legacy for your kids, for your grandkids? How would you see the legacy going forward?
Once the land is sold, it's gone. So I would like to see that persist within the family in some way. Some parts of it. Doesn't have to be all of it, but some parts of it, so that there is some identity of the land and the Jensen family. I think it would be a terrible feeling of any of them to drive by and say, we owned that property at one time, but we don't anymore.
And so if we think about, your role as a steward of the land or a steward of the family, and that would be what you would say would be successful then, if some of the land can be preserved. Would you call that success?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a success. I would call it a deviation from losing all of the land, certainly, and I think in every one of the Jensen people, on down to the youngest, have indirectly in their own minds some association and respect and love for this property. Once it would be all sold, that would be gone. And I would hate to see that left to somebody else. And I'm afraid that that's what's going to happen.
If you look back over, the last 30 years of this stewardship, is there something you would have changed, something you would have done differently?
Oh, yeah. I would have spent...
Planning for heritage property is very complicated. The families always have grand wishes to maintain the property for multiple generations, for it to continue to be used by the children and the grandchildren and further generations even beyond that. Unfortunately, reality always comes in. If you talk to trust officers, they'll often tell you the worst idea is to put a heritage property in trust and lock it up for multiple generations. But if you don't do that, how are you going to ensure that it's going to be maintained? The reality is you have to get everyone on board and have the same idea that this is something we want to keep and preserve. But the next generation does not always have the same resources. If they don't, how are you going to be able to pay for the expenses like replacing the roof or upgrading the property? I often tell my clients that the solution to this is to think of the heritage property as another one of the beneficiaries, an equal share with the kids. Unfortunately for our lake property, we did not have that endowment, if you will, of excess cash that could help pay the bills and improve the property over the years.
If there's a family out there with something similar going on, what kind of advice would you give to that family if they're trying to figure out their own legacy or how to deal with a heritage property, or what would be your advice on that?
Well, I'd say get a hold of a good attorney that represents their personal interest in it. And I fortunately have one, but I don't know about them. And because I know that you, as my son, but also as a representing another family somewhere else, that you would be treating them the same way you would treat your own family. And to me, I'm very proud of that.
Okay.
My grandparents are Generation 1, so my dad's generation is Generation 2, or G2. I'm a G3. My children would be G4s. So each of the members of G3 had a different relationship with that property down at the lake, as did the members of G2. So it's natural to understand that as that power is moving to the next generation, that their interest in preserving the property and keeping it exactly the same is not going to be as strong as it is with the G2s. So it creates tension, and that tension is really needs to be addressed, and sometimes it boils over. But at the end of the day, we need to always remember that we are all family, and we're trying to find a way to work with this unique piece of property that is preserved and really preserved as the legacy from my grandparents and has come now to our hands to be the stewards of.
But I was wondering if you can tell us about your pet deer.
Darlene
Darlene the deer.
Darlene the deer, which would play with Ricky the dog. They would chase each other around the house. And Darlene had a reputation she established because she would walk down to the Diamond Horseshoe, the local casino and bar, on a Saturday night and walk around the tables. She was a total, I guess, an icon around the valley here.
So once you kind of understand that his why, at least as he stated it, was he didn't want future generations to be driving by the property and say, oh, that used to be the family property. That leads to other questions. Is it the property itself where the value is? Is that what's important? Is that what would be missed by the family members in the future as they drive by? Or is it the memories that were made there? As I think about it, I would put it on the latter. But there's a connection there that's undeniable with my father, where he definitely has it connected with the property. And I need to understand that even more in order to be able to find a resolution. One of the things I wanted to get from this conversation was to have my dad acknowledge that this was a gathering place for the family. That's not the value he sees in the property. That was just my assumption. To me, this property is a family gathering space. It's where I get to spend time with my cousins, where I get to see my aunts and uncles, where I get to spend time with my children. And that's why it's important to me. That, to me, is the true value of the property. It's not what my dad is focused on at the moment. What my dad is focused on is the asset itself. It will be difficult to preserve the property. Let's be honest. There are just too many competing interests at this point. But what if we can preserve memories, that legacy, those relationships? As a tax attorney for 30 years, I know how to preserve the wealth. That's not the problem. These intangible values? Oh boy, how do we protect those? How do we keep that going for multiple generations? Isn't that the real question? I'm Derek Jensen, and this podcast is presented by Jensen Estate Law. Please rate and review wherever you are listening to this podcast. Subscribe to stay up to date with our latest episodes, and text the link to this show to your friends.